under the flicker of candlelight, a corpse sat upon the throne of St. Peter, dressed in papal robes, crown upon skull, accused of crimes he could no longer answer for. And as the crowd watched, Rome learned what happens when faith turns into fury. It is late 9th century Italy, a land of ruined aqueducts, carved saints with chipped noses, and palaces where once there were emperors. Rome, that ancient heart, beats unevenly now. Power is a prize fought over by dukes, emperors, nobles, and popes. The year is 897 AD. The place is the Basilica of St. John Lateran. Once a house of prayer, now a courtroom for a spectacle no law book imagined. To understand why a corpse would face judgment, we must first meet the living man who filled the headlines, Pope Formosus. A bishop turned pope. Formosus ruled in an era when the papacy was as much a political throne as a spiritual office. He navigated rival kings, shifting allegiances, and armies crossing the Alps. Formosus had opposed the powerful Spoletan dynasty Guy of Spoleto, and later his son Lambert, and looked to the Carolingian Arnulf of Carinthia for support. When Arnulf marched into Italy in 896, Formosus anointed him emperor in St. Peter's, a dramatic political act that aligned the papacy with a new power faction. But Arnulf's campaign stalled when the emperor fell ill, and Formosus died shortly thereafter on 4 April 896, leaving unresolved wars and enemies eager for revenge. Imagine Formosus in his last months, a man anxious over rival claims, hearing the march of soldiers, praying in halls that smell of smoke and oil. He dies amid triumphs and scandal alike, and the feuds he was part of do not die with him. When a pope crowns an emperor, he doesn't just perform a ceremony, he picks a side. For many in Rome, Formosus's actions were dangerous. Accusations flew that he had violated canon law by holding or seeking multiple bishoprics, the offence called translation of sees, that he'd acted illegally in becoming pope, and that he'd betrayed Rome by inviting foreign power into its politics. To his enemies, his acts were a stain the church had to erase. But politics was personal. The Spoletan faction loyalists of Guy and Lambert and their supporters saw Formosus as a traitor and a usurper. The new pope and his allies wanted not only to discredit Formosus's memory, but to nullify his acts. Every ordination, every appointment, every decree that might still favour their rivals. The stakes were not only reputations, they were power, land, and the loyalty of bishops across Italy. In January 897, by the authority of Pope Stephen VI, Formosus' tomb was opened, his remains exhumed, and the body carried into the Lateran, clothed again in papal vestments, and set upon a throne to face charges no mortal could answer. A deacon was appointed to speak for the corpse. A judge demanded a defense. An assembly of clerics and nobles watched. The world had slid into theatre and sacrilege. The charges read like the legal language of a feud: perjury, illegal accession to the pontificate, and the canonical crime of translation, moving between bishoprics in a way that canon law forbade. Witnesses and clerics debated. The dead did not speak. At the end, the tribunal declared Formosus guilty. As the sentence was pronounced, the corpse's 3 fingers, the fingers used in blessings, were cut from his right hand. Then the papal robes were stripped, his vestments desecrated, and his body dragged through the streets, a procession meant to humiliate, before being dumped ultimately into the Tiber River. The symbolic aim was absolute: to strip him of sacral authority and prevent any relic, veneration or cult forming around his tomb. You can call this spectacle revenge, but it was also strategy. By invalidating Formosus's acts, Stephen and the Spolitans aimed to throw open doors. Bishops appointed by Formosus would be deposed, administration would shift, and the network of allegiance would snap back toward those who'd opposed Formosus. It was damnatio memoriae in ecclesiastical form, the attempt to erase someone from the historical record to weaken his allies. Yet historians debate motive and orchestration. Some older narratives suggest the synod was a Spoletan revenge plot masterminded by Lambert and his mother Ageltrud. Later scholarship questions whether Lambert directly ordered it, suggesting instead a more complex mix of local politics, papal insecurity, and spectacle. What seems clear is that vengeance and politics mixed into a sacrament of humiliation. The horror of the synod shocked Rome. What had been intended as a demonstration of power quickly became a scandal, a sacrilegious display that outraged many clergy and laity alike. In the months that followed, mobs and nobles turned on Stephen. The spectacle that was meant to stabilize his position made him appear monstrous, and monstrous men rarely survive in their own era. Stephen VI was deposed, imprisoned, and strangled in prison, a swift and violent end that underscored the volatility of papal politics in this period. Within a year or two, the Church began to unwind the Synod's decisions. Successors moved to rehabilitate Formosus's memory. Pope Theodore II, briefly in 897, is reported to have ordered Formosus's body retrieved and respectfully reburied in Street, Peter's. Later synods, notably under John IX, in 898, formally annulled the Cadaver Synod's decrees and restored Formosus's acts and ordinations. The Church attempted to stitch back the torn fabric of legitimacy, but some tears were permanent. Legally, the Cadaver Synod exposed the limits and ambiguities of canon law in an age of shifting power. The charge of translation, moving between seas, touched a real canonical matter. But the posthumous trial revealed that legal claims could be twisted into political weapons. The subsequent synods that reversed the Cadaver Synod attempted to reaffirm norms. Ordinations made by Formosus remained valid. The law could not be bent so easily into a tool of factional vengeance. Spiritually and culturally, the event stained Rome's image. The papacy, ideally the keeper of Christian charity and order, had become the stage for a grotesque revenge. For centuries, chroniclers would use the episode to show how far Rome had fallen into corruption and factionalism in the early Middle Ages. The long-term effect was a deep suspicion that the papacy could be manipulated by strongmen, a suspicion that would colour medieval and later views of church-state relations. Modern historians do not see the Cadaver Synod as a simple crime of madness or as purely theatrical vengeance. Recent scholarship suggests a mix. Local Roman factions trying to consolidate power, attempts at undermining Formosus's network of supporters across Italy, and the desperation of a pope who feared being undone by his predecessor's alignments. Some argue the performance was aimed at preventing a Formosan cult that might have bolstered his legacy. Others emphasize that sources from the time like Luitprand of Cremona bring strong biases, and thus we must read the episode critically. The precise involvement of Lambert and Ageltrud remains debated.